Hi, everyone. We are the Santa Clara University Latimer Energy Lads. Um, yeah, let's just get straight into it. We're gonna do a quick agenda. I think can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah, we're just gonna go down this list real quick. I'm gonna do a brief introduction of our team, even though we kind of introduced ourselves already. Go through the use case summary, conceptual design, the distribution impact, our financial analysis, and then we're gonna wrap it up with our development plan. And we can move on to the next slide to introduce our team. So, like I said, we're the Latimer Energy Lads. Um, we're all graduate students from Santa Clara University and mostly working in power systems and sustainable energy. Just starting from the left, Lawrence, then Johnny. There's our team leader, Erica, who unfortunately could not be here today, but she is with us in spirit. So, and then there's me, I'm Ryan, and then next to me is Atri, and then last but not least, we have Ming Hao as well. And then on the next slide that we can go to as well, we'll see our team structure. So like I said, Erica is at the top there, our captain, and also our financial analysis. And then everyone else had their roles, being whether it be in conceptual design, distribution, or development, even though, we all kind of helped each other out when we needed to, but these were our primary roles. So we can move on from here and talk about just our district use case. California State University, Northridge. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it already today, but just to go over it again, it's a public institution in the LA area, established in 1958, and it's one of the largest campuses in the CSU system, with yearly enrollment of around 36,000 full and part-time students. The whole campus covers around like 356 acres of land. We're just working with a smaller like section of that though. Basically, the university's goal is to hit net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2040, and they want to increase their solar PV assets as parking structure rooftops. So essentially, they need 20 megawatts of modules, of solar modules to achieve their goal. And since there were already 1.4 megawatts already installed, they would need around 18.6 megawatts to be installed to achieve this net zero goal. The and then LADWP is their local utility as well. So the campus's rate structure follows sub-transmission service A3 from their local utility, including an energy charge and a demand charge. And the rates are defined on a time of use basis, meaning that depending on the time of day that the load occurs, the change will like vary essentially. And with that summary, I think we're able to move on to just a brief overview of our conceptual system design. We can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're just going to do a quick overview of our conceptual system design. All PV module modeling was done in Aurora, so all of our systems for PV, it was done in Aurora. Our battery simulations were in Reopt and the System Advisor model. There's our PV module that we chose as well, kind of just across the board. We went with this one module. And then we have just a little map here to show you. So the campus has like 4 different substations, but 3 of them are like major contributors. So in the orange yellowish section on the picture, you can see that's all the buildings associated with substation A that we utilized in our project. Highlighted in green are the substation B buildings, and then highlighted in C is anything that or highlighted in blue, sorry, is anything from substation C. So in total, there were 15 buildings and 3 parking structures utilized. Going down the list, just substation A had 2.9 megawatt PV capacity and 6 megawatt hours of storage capacity. Substation B was 2.1 megawatt of PV and 6.1 megawatt hours of storage. Substation C was just a little bit under 1.95 megawatts PV capacity and then storage capacity of 1.5 megawatt hours. So that's just our allocations of our system. And then I think that pretty much wraps it up for our brief overview. So I can probably hand it over to Johnny now to take it over here for the rest of the conceptual system design for our PV. And so we can move on to our next slide, please.
So we had installed carport PV on the parking structures. We had one carport installed in substation B. So we had one parking structure there that had a carport PV installed. We had two in substation C, two parking structures that had carport PV. In substation C, 70% of the PV came from carport installation, so it was a big contributor. They were modeled as ground mounts in Aurora, since carports weren't really an option there. So that's kind of a little nuance we have there. They were modeled at 14 feet and 7-degree tilt, which is pretty typical for a carport installation. And in substation C, it actually had an 111% yield due to the high amount of irradiance that was coming from these parking structures. There was not many obstructions nearby, no large trees or buildings nearby. So they were pretty ideal for installing carport structures there. Moving on to the next slide, please. We also installed rooftop PV. Obviously, there was a lot of room for photovoltaics in these different rooftop structures. So we selected the buildings for their irradiance and availability of space. Not a lot of rooftop obstructions, such as HVAC systems or what have you on top of these buildings. The breakdown goes: substation A had about 2.9 megawatts. It had no carport PV, so that was 100% of the system was rooftop PV. Substation B had 1.125 megawatts, roughly half of it. And then substation C had about 30%. So like I mentioned earlier, carport PV was pretty big in substation C. Different inverters were used depending on the size of each rooftop array. We had about three different inverters to use, so that was pretty helpful. And then also the auto stringer function in Aurora was very helpful for kind of stringing it all along for those inverters. But yeah, we can move on to the next slide.
So moving on to the storage, an eVault battery of 18.5 kilowatt hour nominal capacity was chosen for a turnkey solution. We chose the lithium iron phosphate chemistry for higher durability, efficiency, greater safety, and faster charging as compared to lead acid batteries. This particular one has an incredible rated life cycle of 6,000 compared to the average for lithium ion batteries of 3,500, and a high nominal voltage of 51.2 VDC. Delving into the reopt analysis, we summed up the 15-minute kilowatt hour consumption data provided to us in the simulate campus tab in reopt, and in the resilience tab inputted meeting our objective of 50% of the critical loads for 4-hour durations during grid outages. The optimal battery sizes are shown in the graph on the left hand side below with the kilowatt hour and kilowatt ratings. And since we got a lot of PV curtailment in the optimal dispatch strategy, in the next iteration of our design, we restricted the minimum and maximum PV to be the exact installed capacities and minimum battery size to be the one previously outputted by Reopt. So you can see the output on the right hand side below. Yellow denoting PV curtailment is minimal. The orange part denotes PV charging battery. Blue and red signify battery and PV serving load respectively. The grid serving load is in the gray, and the dashed line is the battery state of charge. So next slide, please. Coming to the SAM analysis, we chose the detailed PV battery option for the simulation and got the following results as shown over here. The net annual generation over 25 years with 0.5% degradation, as you can see from the right. A very healthy annual specific yield of 1,618 kilowatt hour by kilowatt peak. An astonishing result is that after including storage in the simulation, substation A, which had much lower specific yield than the others with just PV installed, generated more than half of the total profits over a 25-year lifespan of the project. with storage. Uh, so coming to the performance ratio, we see a value close to 70%, signifying the ratio of the actual and the expected generations, and then average hours of autonomy of 1.59 instead of 4 hours, as we used hypothetical grid outage data in our simulation. So I'll hand it over to Minghao for the distribution impact analysis now.
Thank you, Audrey. Now comes to distribution analysis. To deliver power successfully to various buildings over the campus, a distribution network is needed. The map on the right side is a general configuration. We finished the analysis for two cases, PV only and PV plus storage system. To the next slide, please. In the analysis, two main factors are considered to run PV and storage system safely in the network. First is overheating caused by the real power, and the second one is the imbalance of the three-phase network caused by reactive power. We design our system based on the following regulated hosting capacities for each substation. Let us move on to the next slide, please. In the two cases, PV and storage systems are mounted in approximately the same location, and the goal is to ensure the power flow of the general system is under regulation. In the next two slides, with the OpenDSS simulation, we have the following results. Let us come to the next two slides, please. We assume a 0.95 general power factor to make secondary adjustments in some buildings based on PV and storage system installation. Among the three substations, substation B needs careful consideration because it has the lowest hosting capacity value. And let's come to the financial slide. Next one. Yeah. For the financial analysis, we assume 30% federal ITC and 10% energy community ITC for tax incentive, 8% loan rate in the first 8 months, and a lower value in the following 15 years. For the capital, we use 8% investor margin to decide our project sale price. In the next slide, please. For installation cost, we take an Unreal benchmark as a baseline to get price for rooftop and storage system energy cost. CSUN has parking buildings, and PV mounted in these structures takes the greatest value. Inputting these assumptions in the next slide, we tune our PPA to approach a zero net present value. The chart displays how much money we hope to get from our investors. In return for this, 8.5% IRR rate is applied. For the customer analysis, Ryan will give an introduction.
Yep. So we can move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm back. And we're gonna just go over how much money we're actually generating for our client here. How much revenue do we actually achieve over our system's lifetime of around like 25 years. So if we're just looking at PV purely, going down the substations A, B, and C, we have around $0.758 million, then $6.126 million, and just a little bit above $1.2 million for A, B, and C, respectively, leading to a total of just slightly above $8 million revenue generated. The story changes a little bit when we add storage to the mix, because now we see a significant jump from what was less than $1 million to now just a little bit above $11.5 million when we add storage with substation A. For B, it jumps from 6 to $9.61 million, and then for substation C, we go from 1.2 to now $2.945 million, leading to a grand total for our lifetime revenue for PV and storage to be $24.157 million. And then So just addressing also the very significant difference between the substation A revenue numbers. We believe that this could be due to like an increasing load at night potentially, so that the storage is helping to heavily cut the demand charge at that time. But to put this into like a better perspective, we can actually go on to the next slide and see this nice little plot over here. So as we see, this reflects what we just talked about. Over 25 years, we save this amount of money, and we're seeing a generally positive trend here. So that's always nice. What I will note is that even though substation C, sorry, starts out with actually negative revenue, so we're losing money on substation C at first, we see that even before 5 years, we already break even and start making a profit. And then also, I want to note that substation A and substation B's revenue starts at a point that already kind of makes up for the deficit that we see in substation C early on, and then we're only going upwards from there in terms of our revenue. But
okay, Santa Clara, sorry to interrupt you. We are at time. I think we missed the 2-minute warning. So any concluding thought, this will have to be your last one.
Okay, I'll just pass it on to Lawrence then to get what we can get out of there.
Some concluding thought is that the development plan, the CSU and its HJ, we plan to have around 8 to 9 months of construction, and we did not cut any trees or did any overhangs for the rooftop solar design.
And sorry, can we move on to the next slide, please?
The next 2 slides will give a brief summary of what I said. And then you can go on to the next slide after this. All right. And for energy equity, we just plan to, since LED WP doesn't allow us to sell our excess energy, we just plan to just dump everything if we have excess or put it in storage.